familiar ceiling. The smell of the bed and pillows, I knew them well. This was my room? Normally there wouldn't be anyone in my room besides me, but their presence made me spring wide awake. When I did that, pain shot throughout my entire body.
大丈夫かな?
Feeling alright?
横になってた方がいいと思うよ。
I think you better just lie down for a bit.
Why was Rana in my room? Blood began to surge through my muscles and my capillaries. But Nana's smile belonged to the Nana I knew well. I knew I shouldn't let myself feel this way, but I relaxed, thinking that this version of Nana was safe.
俺はどうして?
Why am I...
覚えてないの?
Don't you remember?
意識がなくなってからのことは全然.
After losing consciousness, nothing at all. My body had become more lethargic than I could have ever imagined. I guess that would be the expected outcome after exerting everything I had back there. I tried to at least clear my head, but I just couldn't shake the sluggish feeling out of my mind.
一応お医者さんにも電話したから、
I called the doctor.
もうすぐ来ると思うよ。
He should be here soon.
それまで横になってた方がいいと思うな。
I think you'd better just lie down until then.
I wasn't injured seriously enough to merit calling a doctor, but knowing that someone impartial was coming was slightly reassuring.
俺どうしてここにいるんだ?
Why am I here?
確かダム現場で.
I'm sure I was at the dam site.
それはレナが聞きたいな。
That's what I want to know.
何があったのかな?
What happened?
レナが行った時にはケイチくん倒れてて。
When I got there, Keiichi-kun was already passed out.
だから聞きたいのは俺の方だよ.
That's why I'm the one who wants to know.
変な二人組に襲われて.
I was attacked by two weirdos. As I talked about it, I finally remembered what happened right before I passed out. Recalling that memory and the terror that went along with it caused the fogginess around my head to clear right up. Let's forget about those two for now. I didn't expect Nana to be nursing me. I thought Nana was trying to kill me. She would have had the perfect chance while I was unconscious. Not only did she not kill me, she had nursed me back to health.
よく俺を引きずってここまで来れたな.
Amazing you could drag me all the way back here.
重かったろ?
Wasn't I heavy? Looking at Nana's delicate frame, it was hard to believe that she had not only gotten me back home, but even dragged me all the way up to the second floor. Did she have some help?
ケイチくん、覚えてないの?
Don't you remember Keiichi-kun?
Nana appeared a bit surprised, but still kept her smile.
レナはケイチくんに肩を貸しただけだよ。
I only propped you up on my shoulder.
大丈夫、自分で歩けるってケイチくんが。
You said you could walk on your own and that you were fine.
覚えてない?
You don't remember?
I didn't remember. My memory was fuzzy after the point where I lost consciousness.
二人組はどうした?
What about those two?
レナが来た時、俺と一緒に、あるいはそばに二人組の男が。
When you got there, Rena, the ones with me, or rather, those two guys.
いなかったよ。
There wasn't anyone.
She said it bluntly. The way she stated it felt slightly unpleasant. I was just too timid at that time. I might have been able to force some answers out of Nana, but if I did that, then this kind Nana might transform into the scary Nana who I didn't know. Fearing that, I didn't press any further. Thinking about it, it was the obvious choice. If both of those men were there, I don't think Rena would have even stood a chance. I couldn't find a way to explain it, unless I assumed she brought me here after those two were already gone. Nana was still smiling. Her eyes sparkled warmly. Yet, it felt like I was hallucinating when I saw something something akin to a shadow slowly creeping across her face. That small omen sent shivers down my spine. While Rana was still Rana, I needed to make contact. I needed to contact Oishi-san. Nana stopped me when I tried to get out of bed. She said it would aggravate my wounds, so I should sleep.
トイレに行きたいんだけどな。
I'd like to go to the bathroom, though.
ごめん。
Sorry.
Nana couldn't say anything else. While Rana stayed in the room, I quickly went downstairs to get the phone receiver in the living room. When I approached the front door, the doorbell rang. It must have been the doctor Nana had called. It was strange for a patient to welcome in the doctor who was making a house call, but it would be incredibly reassuring to have him here for the considerable time it would take for Oishi-san to get here. I carelessly opened the door with that simple assumption and regretted it almost instantly.
ミオン。
Mion?
あれ元気そうだね。
Oh, you look just fine.
倒れてたって言うから様子見に来たんだけど。
I heard you collapsed, so I came to check up on you.
なんで俺が倒れてたって知ってるんだよ。
How did you know I collapsed?
レナが電話してきたから。
I heard it from Nana over the phone.
他に理由が必要？
Do I need any other reason than that? I understood why she would call a doctor. But why Mion, too? Nana was descending the stairs behind me.
レナ、ケイちゃん大丈夫そうだよ。
Nana, doesn't Kei-chan look pretty alright?
たく心配して損した。
Sheesh, you made me worry for nothing.
そうだね。
That's true.
レナも心配して損したかな。
Maybe I worried for nothing as well.
They both began laughing. It appeared to be cheerful laughter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a darkness looming over them.
うわ、何この下駄箱。
Whoa, what's up with the shoe rack?
どうしてたの？
How did it get like this? The shoe rack that I'd smashed to pieces had been like that since yesterday.
転んでさ。
I fell, you see?
その拍子に持ってたバットで叩いちゃったんだよ。
And the bat I was holding at the time slammed into it.
持ち慣れないもん振り回してるからこういうことになるんだよ。
This is what happens when you swing around something you're not used to handling. I kept the fact that it was none of her business to myself.
でもこれじゃおばさまたちが帰ってきたらびっくりしちゃうね。
But leaving it like this will really startle your parents when they get home.
後でレナが片付けておくね。
I'll fix it up for you later.
さあ、ほらケイちゃん。
Now, come on, Kei-chan.
重病人なんだからちゃんと寝てないとダメだよ。
The terminally ill need their rest.
さあさあ、お布団に戻った。
Come, back in bed, back in bed. Both of them urged me up the stairs. I had no chance to call Oishi-san. I was pushed into my bed. As it was the first time Mion had been in my room, she began searching around it intently. She fiddled around in my room and was scolded by Rana. You can imagine how it went. It was uncomfortable having my room poked around, but the conversation was so benign that it was heartwarming. During that innocent conversation, Mion said something as though it was perfectly ordinary.
レナ、監督には電話した？
Nana, did you call the director?
うん。
Yep.
みーちゃんに電話した後すぐにね。
Right after I called Mi-chan.
すぐ来るって言ってたよ。
He said he'd be right over.
Director? That out-of-place word gave me a bad feeling. Nana called a doctor, then called Mion, and after that, she called a director? Who was this director? Since Nana and Mion's conversation was so peaceful, it only felt slightly odd.
二人とも何の話をしてるんだよ。
What are you two talking about?
監督ってなんだよ。
Who's this director?
ケイちゃん知んないの？
Didn't you know, Kei-chan?
監督って言ったら監督だよ。
We mean the director when we say the director.
映画の監督とか
Like the director of a movie.
工事現場の監督とか
Or like the foreman of a construction site.
I dug through all of my memories for a director who might have business with me. Only one thing came to mind. What Nana had just said. The construction site foreman. The very first victim of the first incident. At the dismemberment at the damn construction site. The foreman? But that was strange. He was supposed to be dead. There was no way they would call him.
お前らが何の話をしてるのかわからないよ。
I don't understand what you guys are talking about.
その監督が俺と何か関係あるのか？
What does that director have to do with me?
来るって言ったけど、うちに来るのか？
You said he was coming. Did you mean to my house? I asked one obvious question after another. But all the two of them did was smile coolly at each other. There was a huge difference between how the two of them appeared and how my suspicions were playing out. Slowly, I felt discomfort and panic welling up inside me. I couldn't understand what Nana and Mion were talking about.
ケイちゃん、最近は野球に凝ってるんだよね。
Kei-chan, you've gotten into baseball lately, haven't you?
監督。それ聞いたら喜ぶと思うな。
Pretty sure the director will be happy to hear that.
だから監督って誰だよ？
So, who's this director?
監督は監督さんだよ
The director is the director.
だから監督って誰だよ？
So, who is this director? Nana and Mion looked at each other and laughed haughtily. That disturbing cackle and pleasant resounded around me. That laugh, long enough to be unsettling, ended abruptly.
そうだ。
Oh yeah,
監督が来る前に済ませとくかな。
we should finish up before the director comes.
ケイちゃん、覚えてるかい？
You remember, don't you, Kei-chan? Her face was laughing, but Mion's eyes told a different story.
覚えてるって何をだよ？
Remember what?
ケイチくん忘れちゃったのかな
Keiichi-kun, had he forgotten, I wonder?
罰ゲームなんだよ
About the penalty.
罰ゲームなんだよ
About the penalty.
忘れちゃったのかな
Did you really forget?
おはぎの宿題
The homework with the mochi?
どれがレナの作ったおはぎかを当てる宿題
The homework where you were supposed to guess which one Nana made?
あれ確か宿題忘れだったよね
You forgot about that homework, didn't you?
I certainly did have that homework, but I had thrown away the rest of the mochi after I found that sewing needle, so I wasn't able to answer which one Nana made. The penalty for that? Why now? No doubt my question was written all over my face. Our answer to my question was that dry laughter. I could no longer make heads or tails of anything. I began to think that this entire day was somehow insane, strange, incomprehensible. Being chased by Rana, attacked by strange men. The penalty Mion and Rana were talking about. What were these two laughing at? It didn't take that long for me to realize I had been dragged into an abnormal situation. Who were these two? Who were these people? Who were these doppelgangers of Rena and Mion? Nana had gotten behind me at some point. Why was she pinning my arms behind my back?
何の真似だよ
What are you doing?
動かないでね。
Don't move.
罰ゲームだから。
This is your penalty.
My body was already very sluggish, and Nana pinning my arms made it that much harder to move. I seriously tried to struggle, but she wouldn't even budge. My panic began to well up, and I realized that this was well beyond the realm of jokes and pleasantries. That freakishly monstrous strength. It would have been impossible for the Nana that I knew. Then, these thin, frail arms grasping me firmly. Whose arms were they?
ケイちゃん、抵抗しちゃダメだよ。
Kei-chan, no struggling.
快速台、何錠でもいいや。
Club rule number. It doesn't matter which one.
罰ゲームに抵抗しちゃダメなんだからさ。
You can't fight against the penalty. Mion. No, that thing that looked like Mion spoke to me like how Mion would speak to me. But I was certain this was not Mion. Someone who wasn't Mion. Someone who's just pretending to be Mion.
監督が来る前に済まさないとね。
Need to finish this up before the director comes. Mion fished into her pockets and pulled out something bizarre. I could tell what it was just by looking, but for such a thing to be in her pocket, my mind wouldn't accept it.
なんだよそれ
What is that? It was a small syringe. It was a small, clear syringe, the kind a doctor might use if you went to them with a high fever. Nana held me even tighter, and I could hear that clattering laughter that no longer sounded like laughter blaring into my ear. That eerie laughter, it wasn't something that the Nana I knew would ever produce from her own throat. This thing that was pretending to be Nana, was this their real laugh? Unable to defend myself, the syringe Mion was holding drew closer, and that needle tip was waved in front of my face countless times.
大丈夫大丈夫。
Don't worry, don't worry.
痛くないから痛くないから。
It won't hurt, it won't hurt.
何をする気だよ
What are you planning on doing?
これは一体何の真似だよ
What kind of sick joke is this?
ケイちゃん、何言ってんだか。
What are you saying, Kei-chan?
分かってんでしょ。
You know exactly what's going on, don't you?
何が
What?
俺には何が何やらさっぱりわからねえよ
I don't understand any of this at all.
知ってるくせに。
I know you know.
今さらかまととぶられてもな。
No use playing the fool this late in the game.
わけのわからないことを言って俺を煙に巻くのはやめろ
Stop talking nonsense to try and fuse me.
富武さんと同じ目に遭ってもらう。
You're going to have done to you what happened to Tomitake-san. What? The same as Tomitake-san. I didn't really understand what she meant. What did that have to do with this syringe?
ケイチくん、とぼけてるね。
You're playing dumb, Keiichi-kun.
うすうすは気づいてたくせに。
You should have realized it by now.
Nana whispered into my ear, laughing as if to admonish me. But even the way she spoke was repulsive beyond compare. Playing dumb? Me? About what? What do you mean, the same as Tomitake-san?
みんな初めはひき逃げされたものだと思っていました。
Everyone thought at first it was a hit and run.
ですが、意識を確かめるために近づいた警官はすぐに異常に気づきました。
Except when the officer got closer to check if he was still alive, he soon noticed it wasn't a normal situation.
喉がね。 引き裂かれていたんですよ。
His throat was scratched out.
ナイフとか？
From a knife or something?
いえ、
No.
爪でした。
Nails. Nails? Nails as in fingernails? With those gouged through? That's right. Tomitaka-san had clawed out his own throat with his own nails and died. There's no way someone could die like that. So then, for that to happen...
薬物を疑いましたが、そういう類のものは検出できませんでした。
We thought drugs were to blame, but nothing of that nature was detected. That's right. The police didn't find any drugs in Tomitaka's system.
警察は富武さんの遺体から薬物は検出できなかったって言ったぞ。
The police told me they didn't find any drugs in Tomitaka-san's body. The two of them laughed together with that sickening laughter. Of course they'd laugh. To assume that such a medicine didn't exist just because the police didn't know about it was completely foolish. Meaning, the drug that caused Tomitaka-san to die in such a bizarre manner did exist. If Mion injected this into me, then that would probably be all the proof I needed. That would basically mean I'd end up the same as Tomitaka-san. Become hysterical, scratching out my throat in my last moments, then die. For such an outrageous drug to exist. For Mion to be holding it. And that I was about to be injected with it. At that moment, I did not feel there was any need whatsoever to question it. What kind of idiot, when he's trying to dodge a ball flying straight for his face, has time to think of a reason as to why it's flying at him?
観念しなって。んじゃ。
Just give up? Alright, then. Mion's actions lacked any gravitas, and that made it even more terrifying. There was none of the ceremony, like when someone is sentenced to death. There was no hesitation at all, as if she was brushing her teeth. Mion reached out with one hand, grabbed onto my chest. It felt like electricity had run through the back of my head, and the entire world had gone dark. Did I stand up too fast? Or did someone hit me really hard in the back of the head? Having lost my sense of balance, I was assaulted by a wave of dizziness. I squatted down for a bit. When I came back to my senses, my entire room had changed drastically. The numbness in my head was gone, and slowly I could tell blood was flowing to my extremities again. How long had I been squatting here? How many minutes? Or had it been hours? It was almost as if the hands on the clock had stopped moving the entire time my eyes were closed. That's how little time had passed. Really? The air in the room wasn't filled with that madness from before, only a dull silence. Nana wasn't there, pinning my arms, and Mion wasn't there, about to inject me with a needle. No way. Could it be? All of it was a hallucination? There was no other presence in the room besides my own. It was the weirdest experience I'd ever had. I was certainly with Nana and Mion. I doubted my sanity for a moment, but I was also seized with some sort of comfort. Haha, I guess that terrible ordeal was a hallucination. Neither Nana nor Mion, they would never do something so terrible. My head grew hot. I could tell my emotions were welling up. Why? That wasn't a reason to cry. Why? It was sorrow. Why was I sad? I don't understand. I don't understand. Kind to everyone, not discriminating against age or gender. Mion. That Mion was sprawled by the window in an unnatural pose. Blood stained her a deep red from her head down to her chest. The bright crimson smeared on the walls. That splatter had undoubtedly come from Mion. She always had that bright smile and was kind to me from the day that I transferred. Nana. That same Nana was slumped at my feet and was making the same pool of blood as Mion. I couldn't comprehend what had happened. Did someone come to save me? Then they beat these two down with this metal bat? I finally noticed the weight in my right hand. How long had it been there? It was Satoshi's metal bat. It was covered in a deep red. There was no doubt that this was the weapon used to mutilate both of them. And I was holding that weapon. I was the only person in the house. What? Looking at this objectively, I couldn't think of anyone other than myself who could have done it.
俺がやったのか?
I did this? That's right. Keiichi Maibara. Of course I did it. I told myself gently, as if coaxing myself. Hey, me. There is no reason for you to remember it, nor is there a need to regret it. Eat or be eaten. You get that, don't you?
でも、違う。こんなに。
But the blood, there's so much. Neither Nana nor Mion had moved an inch. It wasn't just a split forehead and a trickle of blood. Nothing that simple. The entire room was splattered with red, and that told me it didn't end with just 2 or 3 strikes.
死んじまったのか?
Are they dead?
二人とも。
Both of them. The depths of my mind were calm, but on the surface I was panicking and agitated. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. What happened to your usual calm self? Come on now. 2 like you always do. Throw your head back and take a deep breath. Come on. Once. Twice. Breathe deeply. Calm down. Calm down. I chanted that over and over in my head and relaxed. Color came back to my vision and smells reinfused the air. At the same time, I remembered what happened when I blacked out. Anna and Mion had attacked me. They were about to inject me with whatever caused the same symptoms as Tomitake-san. But right before that happened, I fought back. I twisted my whole body and threw Nana as she was pinning my arms. Then I followed through with my spin and rammed my foot as hard as I could into Mion's torso. It was soft. Nana tried jumping on me, so I tackled her as hard as I could and slammed her against the wall. I didn't let that brief moment of having them off balance slip by. Satoshi's bat that was left carelessly by the side of my desk. Bleep. At that moment, everything went pitch black. There was nothing recorded past this point in the videotape of my mind. No, that wasn't right. It wasn't that there was nothing recorded. It was recorded just fine. Just the other me inside myself had told me not to look and had turned off the TV. Just because the screen had gone black and I couldn't see it didn't mean that the videotape within me hadn't recorded it. The TV was just off. The video was still playing. The tape within me, creaking along, still playing. On the other end of that pitch-black screen, that horrifying video was still playing on. Compared to this, though, the scene right before my eyes, was still so difficult to take in. There was blood splattered everywhere on the walls, the two of them in these unnatural poses. Not a sign of movement from them. I couldn't even tell if they were breathing, no matter what the circumstances were. My friends, these girls, I had attacked them. I may have even killed them. But if I hadn't done this, I would have been the one done in for. Balancing that out on an imaginary scale, it felt odd that I'd even feel bad about it. Even if it was a bit excessive, this was justifiably self-defense. The real proof was here. The two of them collapsed here in Mion's syringe, filled with some unknown drug that would certainly solve the mystery surrounding the incident with Tomitoke-san. From the fact that both of these two were involved, they'd be able to pick out the criminals one after the other. Still, I might be suspected for this, but that was just fine. Anyway, now this should be a police affair. This wouldn't fade into the darkness just like Nana's past incidents. As long as the police were involved, that should bring this to a close. They'll probably revisit their investigation on the chain of incidents. Oishi-san would definitely get to the bottom of it. Meaning my wish of not wanting to die, of wanting to know the truth, that would be fulfilled in its most basic form. It was all a matter of time now. The doctor Nana called should be getting here soon. I'll confess everything to him. I needed to contact Oishi-san. At that moment I remembered. Besides the doctor, a director had been called. It was easy to imagine that they were someone deeply involved with the incidents, judging from Nana and Mion's conversation. The ache in my chest, caused by the gruesome deed I'd done, dissipated rapidly. It was not over yet. This place was no longer safe. Stay calm, Keiichi Maibara. It's not over yet. I needed to live long enough to tell the police of this incident. At that moment, I felt like I heard someone's voice from outside. Since people were speaking, it must mean there was more than one person. I moved the curtain ever so slightly and peered outside. It was a bizarre sight. About 4 or 5 grown men were all gathered at the gate. They very much resembled the 2 men who had assaulted me at the dam site today. Those 2 might even be among them. There was one person there wearing a white coat, but he didn't look like a doctor at all. My gut told me he was in disguise, only posing as a doctor. That guy would probably ring the bell and get me to open the front door. Pretend to be a doctor to get me to open the door, and then the rest of them would all rush in at once. At that moment, I saw the car parked behind the men, and my heart nearly skipped a beat. The white van. No mistaking it. That van, the one that had tried to run me down. The man in the white coat entered the gate and headed towards the front door. The rest of the men hid in the bushes and watched him. I probably couldn't pretend that I wasn't home. Undoubtedly, they'd just break the window and enter. I needed to get out of here somehow. Then, use a public phone to contact Oishi-san, and meet up somewhere. First of all, I need a weapon, then shoes. But before all that, there was one thing I had to do. I had no intention of dying. I'd live, and reveal the truth about this nonsensical curse of Oyashiro-sama. But what would happen from here on, regardless of how determined I was, may bring about my demise. And that was why. There was one thing more important than getting out of here right now. I need to get that clock out quickly and take down the note hidden behind it. Damn it. The tape was sticking to it fast. It'd be fine if it was torn a little. I opened up the slightly torn note and began writing another passage with a ballpoint pen. If I wasn't able to inform Oishi-san, then the only thing I could do was rely on this note. I'd never thought of a piece of torn, college-rolled notebook paper could be this reliable before. I had no time. I'd only write what I knew right now. I needed to leave some sort of information that would lead them to uncover the truth. Nana and Mion are conspirators of the perpetrators. This was an undeniable fact. I still don't want to believe it. But it was a fact. Anyway, I'd leave all the information that would help lead them to finding the perpetrators. There are 4 or 5 adults, maybe more. They have a white van. This was everything I was able to see from the window. There may be more. Also, there was that unidentified person known as the director. To begin with, the term director didn't even mesh with Hinamizawa at all. If they were going to include directors from the past incidents, then the only one is the construction foreman, the victim from the first murder. The very first victim in the chain of incidents. Killed in a lynching, his body divided into 6 pieces. His right arm was never discovered. The police should have confirmed that death, but Anna and Mion did both call him director. They said director. They wouldn't use that term to refer to someone who was dead. The police would never even conceive that someone who was deceased could be involved. Could that be some sort of oversight? I didn't know. But even if I didn't know, it could be a big hint for Oishi-san. That's right. They needed to start fresh from the first incident. It wasn't just a simple dismemberment, but the start of this string of mysterious deaths that would follow. So then, there must be something hidden there. Please reinvestigate the victim from the dismemberment incident. He's alive. His death should have been established after an autopsy. Logically, you would think as much. But was that really the case? Could it have been some sort of ploy that they were able to deceive the police with? I shouldn't jump to conclusions, but he may still be alive. I had no time to ponder that right now. Oh yeah, there's something even more important I needed to write. Tomitaka-san's death was from an unknown drug. That's right, that drug. It was an irreplaceable piece of evidence. No doubt, just by having this, everything would be uncovered. I couldn't just leave that vital clue lying on the floor. The syringe is proof. Writing that down, I stuck the syringe onto the back of the clock with plenty of tape, so it would absolutely not slip out and fall to the floor. Firmly. The bell rang. They were here. I couldn't write any more, but even still, there was one last thing I had to write. I have no clue why it has become like this. This may be the closest thing to truth out of everything I wrote on this note. If you are reading this, then I am probably already dead, though you may or may not find my body. If I was going to write out everything that could happen, either dying from the curse or being demoned away, you who are reading this, please uncover the truth. That is my only desire. With this, my last will and testament was complete. It wasn't certain that I was going to die, but it was my final plea, just in case. I folded the note, stuck it onto the back of the clock, and returned the clock back to its usual spot. I couldn't help but pray. Oishi-san, if something happens to me, I leave the rest up to you. After that, I gazed down silently at Nana and Mion. This was probably the last time we'd ever see each other. Nana, Mion.
俺、みんなのこと、本当に友達だと思ってたんだぜ。
I really had thought all of us were friends. But why did it end up like this? I never had any fun in my previous school. I only worried about standardized test scores, about if the school I hoped to get into was where I really wanted to go or a safety net. That was all I talked about. It was a dull life. The people I called friends were also my rivals in studying, in competitions, in personal records, and standardized test scores. Everyone here taught me how unhealthy that lifestyle was. This month was really fun. Making a fuss over lunch, making a fuss over the club, making a fuss over the festival. Something hot began dripping from my face. Uncontrollable tears. I should have no obligation to shed tears for them. But they wouldn't stop. Even if they were after my life. Even if they were trying to kill me. Everything that happened this month, I wouldn't forget it. Or could it be those happy days were all a facade as well? Was it all a trap, meticulously orchestrated up until today to ensnare me? Could it have been that I had just arbitrarily assumed that they were my friends? That couldn't have been the case. Both Nana and Mion, they really were my friends. Those happy days, there was nothing fake or unclear about them. Someone probably forced them to try to kill me. Or their minds were taken over, possessed by the supernatural entity known as Oyashiro-sama. Regardless, both Nana and Mion, they were the best friends ever. And when they were coming after me, it wasn't of their own volition. But they weren't the kind of people to sell off their friends, no matter what means were employed to force them. And there was no way such a thing as being possessed by Oyashiro-sama could happen in reality. Then, did the real Nana and Mion come after me? What was I thinking? What a silly, dumb idea. Having beaten down both Nana and Mion, I was still debating if they were the real ones or fakes. There was no real and fake. Only the reality that was before me. Nana and Mion were sprawled out at my feet. That was the only truth. I was only trying to twist the facts to my benefit, that I had beaten my friends to death. No matter how I spun it, it wouldn't change reality. Nana and Mion were both dead. It felt like there was a crack in the dam of strange emotions I was holding back. It felt like my calm state, which was nothing more than a bluff, had receded, and in that opening, insanity was leaking out. I killed them. I killed them. Nana and Mion. I killed them. The doorbell rang again. The unrelenting echo pulled me back into a state of composure once again. I didn't have a moment to spare. Quickly, I needed to get away. I didn't want to die. I would uncover everything after that. The identity of whoever or whatever had pushed me this far. Even if I had to drink mud and eat grass, I would survive. I would survive. I would definitely survive. I killed Nana for that very reason. I also killed Mion. I went that far just to keep living. So I can't die. For my sake, and for the sake of the late Nana and Mion. I have to survive. I ran towards the door and grabbed my shoes. The doorbell rang again, as if to urge me on. Behind the single solitary door, they were there. Keeping quiet, I headed towards the kitchen, headed towards the back door. Before opening the back door, I put my ear to it and checked for people outside. No one? After I put on my shoes, I opened the door slowly as to not make a sound. There he is! The back door! A piercing voice echoed out. That voice stabbed through me, setting my hair on end. I had to run. Get out of here, Keiichi! One after the other, I felt stuff like rationale and intelligence, those things you use when you have time to spare, spill out of me. I didn't feel any pain from the branches scratching my arms and forehead. My autonomously pulsing heart also felt neither fatigue nor pain. My entire being just wished to live. There was nothing else it desired. It probably had no complaints whatsoever, so of course I wouldn't feel fatigue. I just ran. Just recklessly rushing into the direction I was already heading. Even if nobody was chasing after me, I'd still be running like this. There wasn't a thought in my mind about where I was headed. Turning around, I felt a presence right next to me. That presence was, without a doubt, chasing me like my shadow. If I took even one misstep, I would be devoured. That's what I thought. So I didn't turn around. I didn't stop. I ran, at full speed. That was the chirping of the Higurashi telling me it was evening, trying to tell me something, and then I finally heard it. The wailing cry of the victims who didn't make it. Would I be joining them? Only the Higurashi knew. They knew everything. They definitely knew. So I ran towards where I could hear more of the Higurashi's chirps. But the farther I ran, the farther away their chirping became. I couldn't get near them. Why are you all running away? Was it my fault? Was I the one to blame? Then I'll apologize. I'm sorry. 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 I felt that only the Higurashi knew. The smoking room was filled with a cloud of cigarette smoke. The expensive smoke filter gave off some crackling electric noise, but it didn't seem like it was doing anything at all. Why do smokers have to be shoved so far down in this corridor where the sun didn't even reach? I recalled hearing that the tax revenue from tobacco was about 1/10 of the municipality's revenue. We were the most heavily taxed members of this municipality, so I really wished they'd show us at least a little more respect.
どうしてこれがウーマン切りなんすか？
Why would you discard the 5 mansu here?
街が狭くなっちゃうっすよ。
It's just decreasing your options. One of the younger detectives was having a staring contest with the mahjong magazine called Next Turn.
ウーマン切ってもテンパイ崩れませんから。
You're still in tenpai if you cut the 5 mansu.
配定にかけるなら両面で受けた方がチャンスあるんじゃないですか？
If you're betting on a haite, then shouldn't you be going into it with a mangan?
クマちゃん、川を見てください。
Kuma-chan, look at the pond.
ウーマンは全員切ってますから安牌なんですよ。
They all discarded a 5 mansu. It's a safe tile.
終盤で K 点に走った誰かがダマで待ってたら嫌でしょ。
You'd hate if, at endgame, someone was sitting on a tenpai on the last turn, wouldn't you? The kid let out another groan, put out his cigarette, then took out another one.
納得いかないっすね。
I just don't agree.
わざわざ自分で当たり牌減らすなんて。
Why would you reduce your own options?
ちなみに配定で当たり牌出しても論しちゃダメですよ。
By the way, you can't call Ron with your winning tile in that height day.
え？どうしてですか？
What? Why is that? Just then, I heard a voice coming from down the hall.
大石さん、いますか？
You here? Oishi-san.
一般の方から凱旋です。
You have a call from a civilian.
ありゃこりゃどうも。それじゃちょいと失礼。
Whoa, ain't that something? Well, see you soon.
どうして論しちゃダメなんすか？
Oh, why can't you call Ron on it?
ああ、待ってくださいよ、大石さん。
Hold on for a second. Oishi-san. The man sitting in the seat Oishi-san was headed towards waved at the telephone receiver.
凱旋です。
Outside line.
講習から。
From a payphone.
どうもすいません。
Oh, why thank you.
お待たせしました。大石です。
Sorry to keep you waiting. This is Oishi.
もしもし
Who is it?
大石さんですか。
Oishi-san.
もしもし。
Hello?
前原さんじゃありませんか。
If it isn't Maibara-san.
どうもどうも、こんにちは。
Why, good evening. From the tone in Maibara-kun's voice, I already knew he was in a predicament. This was the first time Maibara-kun had phoned me, and he was calling from a payphone.
落ち着いてください。
Please calm down.
何がありました？
Did something happen?
その、
Well, his voice was erratic over the line. He had completely lost his sense of composure. After checking that nobody else could hear, I prompted him in a hushed tone.
何があったんです？
What happened?
俺。
落ち着いて前原さん。
Calm down, Maibara-san.
今そこに近場の警官を行かせます。
I can have the local officers head to your location.
私もすぐそっちに行きますよ。
I'll be there soon too.
その、多分、無理です。
I think impossible. His voice was quivering and hoarse. He wasn't surrounded by people, even as he was making this call, was he?
前原さんは今公衆電話からかけてますよね。
Maibara-san, you're calling from a payphone right now, right?
どこの公衆電話ですか？
Where's that payphone? There were no other sounds besides Maibara-kun's voice. It had to be a phone booth. I scratched out a note and thrust it at my colleague sitting across from me. Hinamizawa, phone booth. He understood quickly and hastily started on the internal lines.
落ち着いて前原さん。
Calm down, Maibara-san.
今どういう状況なんです？
What is your current situation? It was best practice to avoid flustering someone panicking, but this was an urgent case. Maibara-kun didn't just get in trouble, get away, and then call me. He was in the midst of something dangerous right now. But yelling at Maibara-kun right now would just needlessly cause him to be even more frantic. Maibara-kun wasn't just calling to seek help. He was trying to tell us something more than that. And whatever that was, if I didn't get it from this call, I was certain there would never be another chance. My colleague pushed a note at me in front of me. There's only one phone booth in Hinamizawa. A patrol car is on the way. 5 minutes.
かかりすぎです。
That's too long.
警らには何人乗ってます？
How many officers are in there?
2人です。
2. Not enough. If it was as I imagined, there were likely quite a few people surrounding my Maibara-kun. 5 minutes was too long.
南沢の駐在さんには電話しました。
Did you call the officer stationed in Hinamizawa?
定時巡回の時間です。
He's scheduled to be on patrol.
家人は留守で連絡不能。
They're currently out, and it'll be impossible to contact them.
そう。
God damn!
熊ちゃん、車を回してください。
Kuma-chan, bring the car around.
了解っす。
Understood.
もしもし。
Hello,
大石さん。
Oishi-san.
もしもし。
Hello.
大丈夫です。
It's all right.
ちゃんと聞こえてますよ。
I can hear you loud and clear. There was something wrong with my Maibara-kun. That wasn't a normal coughing sound. Vomiting? Or was it blood? Had he already been attacked? Was he injured?
前原さん、今そこに警官が向かってます。
Maibara-san, the police are on their way.
2、3分で到着しますからなんとか持ちこたえてください。
They'll be there in a couple of minutes, so hold on somehow.
もしもし、
Hello?
聞こえてますか？
Can you hear me?
前原さん。
Maibara-san. I could hear on the other end of the line that he was having a coughing fit. The worst possible situation popped into my head.
前原さん、
Maibara-san.
犯人は誰です？
Who's the culprit?
何人なんです？
How many are there?
俺も最初は人間が犯人なんだと思います。
I thought at first the culprit was human. I couldn't tell if that was a cough or vomiting.
大丈夫ですか？前原さん。
Are you alright, Maibara-san?
犯人は人間なんだって。お社様のたたりなんかないんだって。そう思ってました。
I thought that the culprit was a person, and Oyashiro-sama's curse.
ついさっきまで
Up until right now.
だけどやっぱり
But I guess in the end, it was an intense bout of coughing, then vomiting.
でもやっぱりお社様ってのはいるんだと思います。
But I guess Oyashiro-sama does exist.
いやいます。
No, he's
今
here.
前原さん、どうか落ち着いて。
Maibara-san, please, just calm down.
なんかさっきからおかしいと思ってたんです。
I had been thinking it was strange for a while now.
ずーっとつけてくるんですよ。
It's been following me this whole time.
走っても走っても走っても走っても
I run and run and run and run.
影みたいにぴったりくっついて。
But it just sticks to me like my shadow.
だけど少しずつ
But slowly, so slowly,
俺の背中ににじり寄ってくるんです。
it's digging itself into my back.
前原さん、そいつは今ひょっとして前原さんの後ろに。
Maibara-san, are they right now? Perhaps right behind you.
後ろに
Behind me.
すぐ後ろに
Right behind me.
お願いです前原さん。
Please, Maibara-san.
怖いのはわかります。
I can tell you're scared.
ですがお願いです。
But please,
あなたの後ろに誰がいるんです？
who is it that's right behind you?
振り向けるわけないじゃないですか。
I can't just look behind me.
振り向いたら俺
If I do, I'll...
怖いのはわかります。
I understand that you're scared,
でも教えてほしい。
but please tell me.
ちょっと振り返るだけでいいんです。
You need to turn around a bit.
前原さんの後ろに
Who is
誰がいるんです？
Who is it? Who is it behind you? Maibara-san! Right after I said that, I could hear him vomiting intensely. What followed was a nightmarish sound.
前原さん、あ
Maibara-san.
んたまさか
It couldn't be that you're
喉を引っかいてたりはしないでしょうね。
clawing at your own throat? There was no answer, but I could hear something like scratching. There was a bang, as if something was being hit. My Bada-kun had probably dropped the receiver. I could hear groaning and vomiting over on the other end, and a repeating, abnormal noise.
もしもし
Hello?
もしもし
Hello?
前原さん
My Bada-san?
もしもーし
Hello? I knew how far away my voice would sound on the other end, but I couldn't help but shout. At that moment, I heard whispering coming from the other end. I couldn't tell what he was saying. From the way he was saying it, was he talking to himself? Or was he talking to someone there?
もしもし
Hello?
前原さん
My Bada-san? Rather than whispering, it was some kind of mantra he was chanting over and over. I focused my senses, trying to pick up on what he was saying. What was he repeating? What exactly? Beep. Suddenly, the line went dead. Did he use up his time? It was because it was a payphone. Oh. It was because it cut out so abruptly. The last thing he'd said came out so clearly in my mind.
おいさん、車 OK っす。
Oishi-san, the car is good to go.
おいさん。
Oishi-san?
ごめんなさい。
It was... I'm sorry.
おいさん。
Oishi-san? That's what he was repeating over and over. He said, I'm sorry. I had a gut feeling. There was no longer a need to hurry. I could hear the chirp of the Higurashi spilling in from the open window. I should have been able to hear them this entire time. I just wasn't paying any attention. Why did I focus on them all of a sudden? Were they trying to tell me something? Only the Higurashi knew. That's how I felt. June 1983. In Hinamizawa, a remote village near Shishibone City, there was a murder involving 2 female students. The suspect is Keiichi Maibara, aged X-teen. The suspect called over his 2 female classmates, Rena Ryugi and Mion Sonozaki, to his house and beat them to death with a metal bat. The scene of the crime was the suspect's room on the 2nd floor of his house. The inside of the room was covered with a significant quantity of splattered blood, and there were signs of a struggle with the victims. In addition to the scene of the crime, the entryway, living room, and kitchen all had traces of a struggle. At the entryway, the shoe rack and wall had evidence of being impacted by a strong blunt force. It is believed to have been the same bat as the murder weapon. Having no traces of blood, it is believed the destruction occurred before the murders. There is the possibility that the suspect overpowered his victims to keep them from fleeing. In the living room, the rug had been pulled back, then thrown aside. It is hard to believe that this had a connection to the struggle with the victims, and thus the reason for this remains unknown. In the kitchen, the garbage bag was torn apart and its contents were spread out on the floor. Garbage was strewn about in the surrounding area, and handprints believed to belong to the suspect were discovered. It is believed that the suspect had for some reason taken out the garbage and struck it with his fists. The reason for this remains unknown. In addition, there was a note stuck to the fridge. The words, "Was there a needle?" were written on it. The meaning behind this remains unclear. Just in case, the garbage was searched, but a needle was not discovered. Though the garage door was functional, it had been left open ever since the suspect moved in. The garage door was found closed. The suspect's fingerprints were discovered on the garage door. The reason behind this remains unknown. The suspect fled the scene of the crime. However, a patrolling officer, Hinamizawa Local PD, found the suspect collapsed inside a phone booth. At the time of discovery, the suspect was unconscious in critical condition. He was rushed to the local hospital for treatment, but did not regain consciousness and died 24 hours later. The results of the autopsy indicate the immediate cause of death to have been hypovolemic shock. It was determined that the suspect had clawed at his own throat with his fingernails, and the resulting bleeding caused his death. With the similarity to the death of Tomitaka-san the prior week, the police believe there to be a connection and have opened an investigation. However, due to the wishes of the local authorities, it will be a confidential investigation. Due to the abnormal nature of the death, it was suspected that drugs were involved, but as with Tomitaka-san, no traces were discovered. What prompted all this remains inexplicable. As such, this case is being treated as an act committed on impulse. However, with several accounts of the suspect's bizarre behavior leading up to the incident, it is possible that this was premeditated. Separated from his group of friends, isolation, inexplicable behavior. Several days before the incident, the suspect began carrying around a metal bat. The suspect was observed displaying aggressive behavior, as well as talking to himself at school. His classmates have actually heard portions of what he was saying. 2 days before the incident, the suspect declared to his parents the possibility of his death. Due to these circumstances, the police have begun an investigation on the possibility that this crime was not committed on impulse, but was instead planned several days in advance. Afterwards, a note was found in the suspect's room that he had written himself. The note was written on 2 sheets from a B5 college-ruled notebook that had been each torn in half. As if trying to conceal it, it was stuck behind a clock on the wall. The contents are written in the appendix. The police believe it to be strongly related to the incident. The police changed their line of investigation based on the possibility that the suspect was involved in some sort of incident himself. However, no further clues were found, casting doubt on the credibility of the note. Was the crime impulsive or premeditated? With the situation unclear and no further developments, the case has been labeled as unresolved. However, the following year, suspicion arose regarding the nature of the note. The note was not written on 2 halves of B5 paper from 2 separate sheets, but was originally a single sheet of B5 paper. In order to erase several lines from the middle, someone had torn them out. Judging from the size of the letters, the missing section is estimated to be 2 to 3 lines. It is highly probable that the person who eliminated the lines in question is not the suspect. In addition, judging from traces of large quantities of cellophane tape being stuck on the back of the clock, speculation that something other than the note was stuck there has arisen. The person who first discovered the crime was a detective rumored to have a connection with the incident, Keroanne Oishi. He underwent voluntary questioning, but denies involvement in any damages to the note. The suspect's note. I, Keiichi Maibara, am in fear for my life. I do not know why they are after my life. The only thing I do know is that it has to do with Oyashiro-sama's curse. Rena and Mion are conspirators of the perpetrators. For 4 or 5 adults, maybe more. They have a white van. This is all on the first sheet. The section below this has been ripped out. This is from the second sheet. The section above this has been written out. I have no idea why it has become like this. If you are reading this, then I am probably already dead, though you may or may not find my body. You who are reading this, please uncover the truth. That is my only desire. Keiichi Maibara. I'm gonna probably do the extra in my own time, but for now, I think I'll just go ahead and thank you all for watching and listening to me play Higurashi When They Cry, Onikakushi. I don't own the other games yet, but hopefully I will someday, and when that happens, I'll be sure to record it and put them up on the channel too. But for now, thank you again, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Bye!